पाकिस्तानी अमेरिकन लॉ इन्फोर्समेंट सोसाइटी की जानिब से लिटिल पाकिस्तान ब्रुकलिन न्यूयॉर्क में एक टाउन हॉल मीटिंग का अहतमाम किया गया, जिसमें कम्युनिटी की कसीर तादाद ने शिरकत की। इस मौका पर तकरीब के मेहमान खसूसी पुलिस कमिश्नर न्यूयॉर्क सिटी ने तफसीली इजहार ख्याल किया और आम लोगों के सवालों के जवाबात दिए। कमिश्नर पुलिस पाकिस्तानियों में घुल मिल के तस्वीर बनवाई। कमिश्नर पुलिस के हमरा NYPD के दीगर तमाम आला पुलिस ऑफिसर भी मौजूद थे। ये प्रोग्राम बहुत मुफीद साबित हुआ और इसे खूब सराहा गया। जाहिद शहबाज, पाक वतन TV, न्यूयॉर्क।
Is my request to you is possible, and we have the youth officer directly involved with the school, the social life of the schools. As you mentioned, you already the plan of involved in direct and involved in the school.
That's a great question. I think I heard most of your question. It involves and what can we do as an agency in terms of getting involved in the schools and to push back against peer pressure and the youth officers?
Yes.
Yeah. I'll probably steal the answer. I should give him the mic because he'll answer it better. If you want to talk about Ben's experience in the school system of New York City, we're talking decades here. We made a conscious decision this year to really take a second look at, we do a very good job on fighting crime, I think. If there's any crime still occurring, there's too much crime. We get that too. But we've been able to transform, I don't know how many people in this room or how long you have been in Brooklyn or in New York City. I can tell you that New York City, when I grew up, as a young kid in the 70s and the 80s, was a very, very different place. And I mention that as just historical context in terms of fighting crime. But we're in a different place right now, and on a lot of different levels. It's no longer good enough to just fight crime. It's how you do it. And when you look at all the landscape of different laws that are passed and attitudes about incarceration, for example, we're working with the new plan, and one of those strategies that really we have been putting a lot of thought behind this year is kids. We don't get it right with kids, and you can define it however you want. 11 years old, maybe you want to go younger, or maybe that's too young. But up to 18 years of age, if we don't get it right, I believe that we're going to be paying for it for the next 30 years with those same very kids. So what can we do differently? And when you look at what we're trying to do with the youth officers, we're looking at really three different segments of kids. There is a very small group of young men mostly, sometimes it's young women recently, that get into a lot of trouble. We are going to be looking at that. But that's not where our focus is. We're always going to be looking at crime. We want to look at children, kids, that never get into trouble and make sure that they stay out of trouble. And I think that that's where you were going with the mentoring and the peer pressure. We also want to make sure that when a kid does get into trouble, whether it's drugs or whether it's hanging out with bad kids and making some bad decisions, that we do everything that we can to step in at the earliest possible time to try to correct them and put them on a better path. And that's a commitment that we've made. We just, as I said, we're training, kicked off yesterday for 300 police officers. In addition to that, under the Community Affairs Bureau, we have about 5,500 school safety officers that are in New York City schools every day, being a point person, working with kids, not looking to arrest kids, but looking really to keep kids safe. So we think that there's multiple touch points that we already have. It's not reinventing the wheel, it's more getting a little better organized in terms of, and I've used this example many times, any part of New York City today, we can take a look at it geographically and tell you exactly what is happening in terms of crime, what arrests are made, how many burglaries, how many stolen vehicles, how many hate crimes. But if you look at that exact circle, that exact geography in any part of New York City, and you turn to one of our precinct commanders and say, what services are available for kids in that area? I don't know that they're going to have that answer. I mean, maybe they will. God bless them if they do. And I don't think it's their fault that they don't. It's just we've never really looked at the problem that way. And we're going to start looking at the problem in terms of being better coordinated with all the city agencies, all the private agencies, all the churches, all the clergy of different religions, all the parents groups, all the public schools that aren't open late. Can we get them open late so kids have something to do? We also run Explorer programs, and we run cadet programs to try to build a pipeline into the NYPD, if that's what people want to do. Job opportunities. We're working with private companies and saying to them, you have a stake in this in New York City. This isn't the police department's problem, this is everyone's problem of keeping kids out of trouble. What can you do? What internships? What job training can you offer for kids? I will tell you that I am very optimistic on this front. Usually when we have an idea, a lot of people like it, some people don't like it, and some are somewhere in the middle. When you talk about kids, and when you talk about children in New York City, and keeping them out of trouble, and giving them opportunities, it is 100% universal that everyone wants to get it behind us. So I think that's the good news. I think now it's turning slowly, where we have to stop talking and start doing. And that's going to be the hard part, but we are absolutely committed.
रेस्टोरेंट और केटरिंग सर्विस के लिए होलसेल रेट पर सप्लाई के लिए मिस्टर बाबर से रब्ता कीजिए 711887259995। बम्पर सेल जारी है। 3 स्टार ग्रोसरी एंड हलाल मीट 3078 Coney Island Avenue, Brooklyn, New York 11235।
Mohammed Ayub, are you still here? All right, so we'll come back to Mohammed. We'll go to our next question, which is going to be asked by our very honorable, and we're very proud of Kashif Hussain. He works for New York City Deputy Public Advocate's Office. So Kashif Hussain, he would like to ask next question.
Thank you, good evening, and thank you, Commissioner Shea, for bringing the all-star leadership here to the Little Pakistan. A little statistic about the community that you're in. This is the most Pakistanis outside of Pakistan per square feet area. So, welcome. And we as a community have also witnessed to the success and growth of Pakistani American Law Enforcement Society. We're very proud of them, the membership, all the officers, the leadership that is sitting here. Tremendous work that they have done not only with the police department, but within the community. So a round of applause for the PALs and PALs membership. The question I have is regarding the hate crimes. As you know, the statistics and data drives policies. There's a feeling between the community that there's the disconnect between the community and the NYPD when it comes to reporting the hate crimes. Whether it's they don't have the proper way of reporting the hate crime, or maybe the hate crimes are not taken in a way that it should have been. The only mechanism that the community has found to address that issue is to involve local elected officials, have the dialogue going from that angle, and then involve police and stuff like that. So is there anything we can do to better that mechanism? Is there anything we can do to educate the community and get involved with the community, or vice versa, so learn something from the community? There are lots of folks on doing a great job on the front lines when it comes to hate crime from the community. Maybe they can help out assist in the process. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, and it's very important to us as an agency. I will speak about it briefly, and I'll give the mic to Deputy Inspector Mark Molinari, who's the head of the Hate Crimes Task Force here in the city. We have the largest hate crimes task force in the country, in the NYPD. There's roughly 24, 25, he may correct me, but members of the NYPD assigned under Inspector Molinari. We also have another 25 members that are monitoring hate speech, wherever it may occur. And that's a new unit. And the thought behind that unit is we don't want to wait and watch hate speech ferment on the internet frequently, is what we see, until there's a terrible incident somewhere and then say, we should have seen it earlier. That one's a little trickier because that's protected speech. And we have to make sure that we're operating under all the appropriate legal guidelines on that one. I'm going to come back to Mark now. On the hate crimes task force, so one is proactive and one is reactive. Mark, I would describe as the reactive. Anytime an incident is reported in New York City, one of Brian's police officers will respond. Depending on what the incident is, it quickly escalates up the chain where a captain responds, and ultimately it will be delivered to Mark for the ultimate determination and the follow-up of the investigation. The key point there is anything reported to us. And I think that that's what you really, at the heart of what you said. The first question of the evening from the woman in the back was, where do I find information? And I keep coming back to that. You know, we invented a lot of things over the years, Mohammed, but if I invented things, or really when I say me, it was people like Mohammed, and the police officers in the street didn't know about it to use it, we failed. We used to talk about things like that. If we have a unit that solely exists to hear your concerns and you don't know how to connect to them, we have to do a better job. So it's not just internally, it's externally here too. You have to report anything that is occurring. If you don't report it to the police, we don't know about it. Now I will tell you that Mark, more than ever, is catching cases basically off somebody posting something on the internet or somebody seeing graffiti or hate speech scrawled somewhere in New York City. And when we see something like that, oftentimes somebody on his dais is shooting him an email and he takes a case on it and now it's reported. But I am not naive. Whether you're talking here in Brooklyn or you're talking in any other part of New York City, we're probably capturing, and I would argue that it's like this everywhere, a fraction of what is really occurring. But we can't educate kids about it. We can't hold people responsible. We can't correct conditions if we don't know about speech, destruction of property, or more significant crimes like a robbery or, God forbid, an assault or a sexual offense. So my message to you is really simple. You have to tell the police. You have to call 911. If you're the victim of a crime, call 911. If you're more comfortable walking into your local precinct, walk into your local precinct and report it. If you're more comfortable telling an elected official for whatever reason, that's fine too. Just make sure that they report it to the police. And we will absolutely investigate it to the fullest extent that we can. Sometimes Mark investigates things that are disgusting, but they don't turn out to be hate crimes. And I think he can talk about that in a second. But believe me when I say that I know I speak for everyone up here. We are unified in that it is extremely disturbing to us. I will say it is even disgusting to us that in 2020, somebody should walk down the street anywhere in New York City and be subjected to, whether it's language, whether it's physical contact, solely because of who they are. Whether the religion they worship, whether it's their sexual orientation, whether it's the color of their skin, or any number of other protected classes. We will put the full might of the NYPD behind it. And I can tell you that Mark and his detectives do a great job, but we are not naive. There is a lot more work to do. I'll tell you too that every borough, Brooklyn here in Kings County under Eric Gonzalez, every borough prosecutor has a unit within it solely to investigate hate crimes and give them the urgency that they really deserve.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you all. There's really very little I could or should add to that. Everything you said was a good summary of it. So let's look over a few other points. We are the largest hate crime unit of any law enforcement agency in this country. At the number of Commissioner quoted, 25 people. We are the second oldest hate crime unit in the country. Of all law enforcement agencies, there's only about 6 to 8 of them that have a dedicated unit just investigating hate crimes. They'll couple it with some other crimes. NYPD has been doing this for a very long time, just a separate unit doing this. Actually, this New Year's Eve is going to be the 40th anniversary of the NYPD having a unit investigating hate crimes. So to get into the reporting mechanism, the first point of reporting is how serious. I know the NYPD takes this as an executive for as long as I have and the other executives who are around. If you feel you're a victim of any crime, you report to your local police officer, your NCO, your youth coordination officers that are coming out, your sector cars. Walk into a precinct, flag down a police car, any way that you report that incident to a police officer. If it's identified by that police officer, this might be motivated by the identity of the person, it's going up the chain over and over again. These incidents get the precinct commanders and the executive staff involved immediately, to the point where they're speaking with the victim. We don't want to let anything slip through the cracks. We want to make sure it's investigated well and thoroughly. And if it's truly a hate crime, shouldn't the precinct commanders be plugged in right away so they can work with the community? And that's exactly what we do. And guys like Jimmy and Anthony, who call me all the time, we work on these together immediately from the get-go when they come to our office. The NYPD takes hate crimes as one of the most high priority, serious situations because we know it's not a crime against a person. It's a crime against an entire community. It could be a crime against thousands of people, millions of people. So we do have to focus on to get that done. The last thing I'll reiterate with the commissioners is reporting. Absolute reporting. I feel, being a cop for 25 years, I feel that all incidents have to be reported to the police. There are no repercussions against victims in New York City. All incidents have to be reported. If not for yourself, I believe it's all of our duties to stop this perpetrator from possibly doing this again. And the only way we can do that is getting him to the NYPD. As the commissioner said, a lot of cases we get come from social media. Somebody will post a picture, and the other agencies we work with, the DA's offices, the mayor's office, the elected officials, will send me that because I didn't see it on social media. And now I have to backtrack that situation. I have to track down that person. It's a lot of extra work, and sometimes it's a dead lead because the person reported to Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or any other social media handle, and we didn't get it. So I encourage everybody to make sure if there's an incident of any criminal nature, report it, starting with your local police. Thank you.
Just one last thing, and it goes to the communication too, Mark. Hate Crimes has its own Twitter page. So there you go. There's no excuse not to report something. Can you give out the Twitter handle if you know it off the top?
It should be, it's very simple. It's at NYPD Hate Crimes.
So there you go. Everyone has a phone in here. You just type it into the search in Twitter at NYPD Hate Crimes, and you can literally message direct to NYPD Hate Crimes Task Force. So there's no excuses. You'll get a communication back, and I think that now you have a member of the New York State Police as well,
Yes.
liaisoning. So we're trying to just close that gap, if any gaps do exist. So we have a very tight working relationship with the New York State Police as well. And it makes sense. Why? Because who does something in New York City may in fact be doing things elsewhere too. So it's that sharing of information among law enforcement. Thanks, Mark.
Our next question will be asked by Raja Tahir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome all the guests here. Just because we see all you together over here with this community, I think this gives us confidence and encouragement and sense of safety that we are in safe hands. My name is Raja Tahir. I served Pakistan Army for 16 years. I'm serving here in New York City Transit as a maintenance supervisor. And on the community basis, I'm a part of One Nation Us, which is a non-profit organization. And we do something good for the community. And I'm the chairman of One Nation Us. Then one of my sons is serving in the city, again in MTA. And the important thing is my other son is serving United States Army in Washington. The purpose of giving this introduction is that to tell you, the Pakistani community and we as a Pakistani, we are very much involved in the safety, service, security, and all those things for this state, for this nation, and we are standing along with you guys on the front lines of this country. So, we are proud of that. We are proud of that, and we are serving this nation as much as we can up to our own capabilities. So my question regarding being a soldier, my question and concern always is regarding the shooting, active shooting, hostile shooting, shooting against the religious institutions, shooting against any minorities. So my question is, if that happens, do you have any mechanism to defend that happening? One thing is it should not happen, God forbid. Second, if it happens, what passive measures, what defensive measures we have as a community that we can counter that or defend ourselves? Or do you have any training measures which you can work with the community leaders? A lot of community leaders are sitting over here. That you can work with the community to train ourselves and our children to safeguard against any such happening in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your family service. My brother is in the Army as well, and he's in Washington, so perhaps my brother and your son know each other. Maybe. You know, we were painfully reminded of, with the Jewish community in November and December, in terms of what happened in, I'd be wrong if I said first. It was most recent in Jersey City and then followed by Muncie, but certainly wasn't the first attack at a religious house of worship, which is intolerable, whatever the religion. Those two recent attacks caused us really to take a fresh look at what we do in New York City, and I'll kind of recap that for you. The answer is yes, there are services available to you that I encourage everyone to take advantage of. And there is a multi-layered approach. So we have a number of officers assigned in the last, I would say, 5 or 6 years to deal with threats of this kind that are deployed throughout New York City. Our strategic response group, our critical response group, that go to strategic locations such as high visibility locations, locations where numerous people gather. It may not be just religion, it could be a shopping area. It could be, Fifth Avenue at Christmas time. But it certainly is as well areas where people gather for religion. There's also, on top of that, prevention things that could and should be done, that our units, when you think of what we've seen recently, not just in New York City, but in this country, with active shooters. We have units that will go out and survey buildings in terms of what you can do to target hard in a building. That may be things that could be done outside in terms of planters. That could be basics like lighting and locks on doors or video cameras. So there are a number of things that are done there. And then there's also, I'll just touch on this training that is available. It's in very high demand, I'll tell you. So it's not something that necessarily is going to be available.
नाम मोहम्मद सरवर चौधरी है, फार्मासिस्ट हूँ, अरसा दराज से यहाँ प्रैक्टिस कर रहा हूँ न्यूयॉर्क स्टेट में। तो यहाँ ये फैमिली केयर फार्मेसी के ऊपर मैं खड़ा हूँ और इसका एड्रेस है 170 एवेन्यू यू, ब्रुकलिन, न्यूयॉर्क 11223। तो आपको किसी स्पेशल विटामिन की और OTC विटामिन की या दूसरी जो प्रिस्क्रिप्शन ड्रग है डॉक्टर के थ्रू, वो आप यहाँ से हासिल कर सकते हैं। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया।
Well, let's ask you, it may not be you that will handle it, but you can put them in touch with the right people in terms of active shooter training. What do you do? What do I do if something like that happens? And the proven best case industry, if you will, industry standards of what gives me the best chance of survival? What are the things that we've learned across the country, best practices that have been put out by the FBI and others in terms of, gaining time, in terms of hiding, in terms of at some point in time having to make a decision to fight. So all of those things are things that we look at on a continual basis across New York City. We certainly deploy so that an incident like that never happens. But at the same time, we intend to continue preparing people to be ready if, in fact, anything ever does. And that speaks very clearly, whether it's hate crimes, whether it's getting crime statistics, or here. These things are available, and they are available to through the police department to really make you aware of what's available and to better prepare you for this. This is things that, whether it's a school or a religious institution, we will absolutely talk to you afterwards and put you in touch with somebody that can provide those services.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'd like to acknowledge a couple of NYPD Pakistani captains. First captain, Captain Wahid Akhtar. He was the first Pakistani captain, also proud Captain Dio Rana. They're both captains. We're so proud of you. I would also like to acknowledge a couple of our community partners, Dr. Ijaz, who's from American Pakistani Political APAC, and Mr. Ali Rashid, he's from American Pakistani Advocacy Group. They're both very, very important and connecting and advocating within our community. Thank you, both of you. So our next question will go to Mr. Farasat Chaudhry. Mr. Farasat Chaudhry.
Good evening, honorable guests. My question is, as a resident of New York City, how I can protect my neighborhood and the city? And are there any program for us to join to assist the police department? Thank you, and I want big hands for the pals who arranged that. Thank you.
So when you look at what we represent sitting up here, we represent an awful lot of men and women in the New York City Police Department that I think do an outstanding job day in and day out serving the people of New York City, putting their lives on the line. Not perfect, far from perfect. I don't think anyone in this room is a perfect human being, but I'm awfully proud of the work they do. With that being said, I also know from nearly 30 years of police experience in this city that there is only so much at some point in time that can be done by law enforcement. The true magic happens when you have a partnership and trust built between the community and the police. So the answer to your question is absolutely there are things that you can do. Absolutely there are groups. We have over 5,000 auxiliary police, I believe that's the number, throughout New York City. And it's not for everyone, but I mention that here as a plug because I get the numbers on precinct by precinct who has people signed up the most for auxiliaries. These are men and women that go through rigorous training. They're not paid to do it. They go out, they put in a certain amount of work per month, And they do it because they love their communities, and they serve as eyes and ears for the police. So whether it's something like the auxiliaries, it's the same principle to me as block watchers. And if you can't do things like that, then you can getting involved, showing up at community meetings, hearing what's going on in your community. Because as the old saying goes, right, there's never a cop around when you need one. Well, I wouldn't say that. But we sure are a lot more effective when we have thousands of eyes and ears on the blocks, seeing. No one knows a street in New York City like the people that live and work and play on that block. No one knows the person that doesn't belong on the block. I've lived on this block for 30 years, I've never seen that person, and I know who lives in that house, and it's an elderly woman who lives there alone, and that person just walked out her door. A police officer may not know that driving by that, but you will, because that's your block, and you know that neighbor, and you know that she doesn't have any people to come and check on her. Getting involved. Getting involved is the key, really, to how we take neighborhood policing, which we're extremely committed to, but to that next level. I think that, you know, there's so much positive in New York City the last number of years. We're struggling right now. We have some challenges right now. No doubt that we'll get through them. But when you look at the historical context of where we are in New York City, how we police New York City, we're in an awfully good place in terms of, I mean, I could recite statistics till you're tired of hearing me talk. Thousands of murders a year, 5,000 shootings a year, probably 100,000 stolen vehicles a year. And now where we are in 2020, I'm not happy because crime has ticked up, and I'm always looking to keep it even going lower and lower. But even with where it is now, we had 3 years in a row with under 800 shootings. Compare that to 5,000 a year. We have days in New York City, we have days in New York City now where we don't register a shooting in the entire city of 8.6 million people. We have to make sure that we don't go a step backwards, but we also have to make sure that we do it the right way and continue to not police the city so that you feel the police coming into your community. We have to do it in such a way that you feel you are doing it with the police in your community, and that's how we'll really get to a good place. But auxiliary police, come to your neighborhood meetings, come to your build the block meetings. Those meetings serve many purposes. It's an information sharing, but it's also, you can't go to a meeting without talking to your police officers, without talking to the men and women that patrol your precinct, without getting to know the precinct commander that is in charge of your precinct, and you start developing that relationship, and it's a win-win for everyone.
And I'll just add to the Commissioner's list of things you can do. One is you could become a community partner. We were building our field training program for our police officers graduating from the academy. We also added a component that we hadn't ever had before in NYPD, which is this group of citizens who volunteer to be hosts to our new officers when they arrive in the commands, precincts all over the city. I mean, the one thing, and the Commissioner alluded to it earlier, one thing we can say about New York City today is it's probably as diverse, when the New York City Police Department is as diverse as and reflects the citizens that live throughout the city. So it's incredibly important that, and I think to the young lady's point over there when you asked about having a Pakistani officer assigned to the precinct, community partners, one of the roles that they play are educating police officers, no matter who they are, whatever ethnic group and culture they are when they come to your precinct. And so you walk their posts with them, you can educate them about the culture of the community. Those kinds of things are very, very important. So police officers, whether if they're not Pakistani or even Muslim, they can still learn from you and they can feel comfortable in the community. Years ago, that was not the case, and police officers were assigned. Many of them didn't live in the city. Today, better than 60% of our officers actually live within the city limits. that was a different phenomenon many years ago. So that's another thing. And one other thing you might take advantage of is our Citizens Police Academy, which is an opportunity for people who are interested in learning more about how we do what we do, how officers make decisions and how they exercise discretion. You can go through this 15 weeks now, and you graduate from that program, but it gives you, we expose you to pretty much all the kinds of training that police officers do on a regular basis, so that you then have a sense of how difficult the job is and can appreciate perhaps more how police officers, how challenging the job that officers do really is.
Thank you, Commissioner. Nasir Salim, who was recently promoted. Thank you so much. Our next question will be asked by Asid Aziz. Asid Aziz.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening everyone, and thank you pals for organizing this community event. My question is, we see all police officers equipped with a body cam, and we love the initiative for transparency. Can police respect our privacy while reporting in our homes and our Islamic centers and masjids? What is the NYPD's policy for such cases?
Sure. Okay, thanks very much. Great question about body-worn cameras. It's definitely timely because we now have 25,000 of our police officers wearing body-worn cameras. We started to roll out body-worn cameras in mid-2017. So we now are in a place where we have those officers wearing those cameras, and we have a whole list of protocols so when the cameras are on and when they're off, and we reference people's residences in particular. Typically, we officers are required to let people know that they're recording unless the situation is such that there's crimes being committed and they don't have the opportunity to do that, and nor should they. For safety purposes, but ordinarily, if they're coming into your home and if you make a request that you don't want the cameras on, then they will be off under certain circumstances. Of course, if you're responding to a domestic dispute, then and I enter your home, then I'm going to have the cameras on. So there are different circumstances under which they're on or they're off, but we do take into account the privacy needs of and respect the wishes of citizens in the city when we particularly respond to their homes. In the public way, on the public way, in the public streets, different story altogether. We want the officers, if they're taking action, then we want the cameras on throughout that event. And they're off typically for administrative kinds of activities. So that's the simple explanation in that regard.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So, we know that the commanding officers of a precinct, they are basically the representative of their precinct, and they also belong to some community, right? So is it possible that we can have a Pakistani captain as a commanding officer to our precinct? That's that's one of my questions. And the second part of my question is a little different from this one, and that is that, do you see an increased role of NYPD to deal with the coronavirus related challenges? So, two questions.
On the first one, I'll defer to the earlier question. It's the same. I think the one good thing is that we have a lot of very qualified people, every ethnicity, literally. And male and female across this. And we have 77 precincts in New York City, and it's extremely competitive in who gets placed into those positions. But in terms of choosing someone to go simply because of their heritage, it's the same answer as before. We would be forbidden from doing that. In terms of the coronavirus, we are working closely. We had a meeting. 7:30, and about 3 hours ago, all of us were in an executive staff meeting, and it wasn't the first meeting of the day. This is many each day, internally, as well as it starts in the morning with multiple agencies across New York City, with the mayor's office and many others involved. I would say that all city agencies at this point are really planning on contingencies, worst case scenarios, etc. I think the overall public message, though, has been pretty consistent. When you look at the Department of Health, when you look at CDC, whether state or federal, it's remained calm. Best practices, avoid people that are obviously sick, whatever they are sick with. Sanitary. We had a promotion ceremony today, and when people walked across the stage at One Police Plaza, I didn't shake their hand. That's an adaptation, and I wanted to shake their hands and congratulate them, but we made a decision. We're going to do everything that we can to avoid pushing the envelope and potentially spreading disease. So washing hands, coughing into the elbow, things of that nature. We have a number of people that internally in the police department, we have to look at things a little differently, because when people call for help, we go. And we go whether they're the victim of a crime or whether they're sick. And sometimes, we're planning ahead for scenarios where people are very sick and need help. And whether it's the emergency medical services, or sometimes it's the police department that respond to those. So we have a dual focus here of doing everything we can to keep people of New York City safe, but also to keep our own employees safe. And masks distributed in case they're needed. They're not at this point in time. And really trying to plan for all eventualities. But it is certainly something that we are talking about each and every day. I would like to think that maybe one day, 6 months from now, we look back and say it wasn't as bad as we thought it was, and that would be a good thing. But we will plan for the worst, and we will do everything we can to keep people safe.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Many of our kids are unfairly being failed in the entrance physical exams and are not able to enter the public department and police department due to this unfair treatment of the physical failure during the hiring process. So how can you ensure?
Can you just repeat I'm sorry, I didn't hear the beginning part.
Many of our kids are unfairly being failed in the entrance physical exam. And are not able to enter the police department due to this unfair treatment of physical and physiological failure during the hiring process. How can you ensure of that process? How do you ensure that it's not being targeted, especially towards our young people?
Areas of the hiring practice, people feeling that certain parts of it were unfair. I can tell you that I can say with definitive language here that it's not any one segment that complains. We're actually hearing complaints from many ethnicities across the spectrum of people complaining about one part or another about the hiring practice. It's something that we are ongoing looking at. It's not the first time that we've looked at it. I don't know that we've identified anything glaring that you would say this is unfair, but it's certainly, I can tell you with absolute definitive statement that we are continuing to look at that to make sure that our hiring practice is fair to everyone, not any one ethnicity, but really to everyone, and that it stands that test. We have had some complaints about the psychological process. Probably more so than the written and more so than the physical, but I'll let Ben talk to that and see if he agrees or disagrees with me. But we are aware of it, and I can tell you that we're looking into it. I have not heard anything specific to, for example, the Pakistani community saying it's targeted. I've heard many groups say that they feel that there's problems, and I'm not willing to say that there's definitively a problem, but I also do believe that when you hear the same thing over and over from multiple sources, shame on us if we don't look at it.
That's absolutely right. Where there's smoke, there's fire, perhaps is the phrase, I suppose. But no, we are, as the Commissioner said, we've been looking at this issue for quite a while now. And one of the things that and it has been across the board, the spectrum of people. And the other point that I'll make simply is, when you look at our hires, we hire quarterly classes that come in. So these are folks that obviously have made it through the process and met all of the standard requirements, and now they're coming through. That every class since 2014 has been incredibly diverse. You anywhere between 25 and 35% of the class have been people who were born in other countries and speak many different languages. So I think the process. I tell you that because and to reinforce the Commissioner's point that this is, to the extent that our process and the psychological exams may be disproportionately impacting people. Those people are across the spectrum, and so we haven't gotten the sense that one particular group is being singled out. Rather, we are looking at the psychologists and the process. We had someone who ran the psychological testing process for decades, and I think we are looking at that as a possibility in terms of the culture then and the culture now. But the truth is, I think we are, one of the solutions that we're looking at is hiring more psychologists. We built a structure already that has better supervision, so that if someone is disqualified along the way, it's each one of those disqualifications are reviewed by one of our psychiatrists or the senior psychologist to make sure that there is nothing that appears to be untoward in that decision. So, but I think as we go forward, we will be hiring, and probably one of the challenges we face is to hire psychologists who have more experience. And so we're looking at that and as well. So thank you for the question, because it's something, as the Commissioner has said, it's been on our minds for quite some time, and we want to address it and maybe eliminate these kinds of complaints, and that's what we plan to do.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would like to acknowledge a police inspector who's visiting here from Pakistan. His name is Rashid Habib. Even though this is more of a community collaborative event, he would like to take this opportunity and he'd like to ask a question from the police commissioner and the police press here. So Mr. Rashid Habib.
Thank you. My name is Rashid. I am from Pakistan and presently working in Azad Jammu Kashmir Police. Also working as station house officer of one of the police station. We are also facing a big issue of cyber crime, social networking, and also internet related crime. Can you please start any interactive session with Azad Jammu Kashmir Police with New York City? Is it possible? Thank you.
What was the last thing I heard about the cyber crime, but what was the last?
Cyber crime, internet related crime.
And what was your ask at the end?
Collaboration.
Yeah, we absolutely can. We can absolutely work on collaboration, and I'm sure that there's things that we can learn from each other as well. We about 7 years ago stood up a grand larceny division here in the NYPD with 200 detectives, and that's a lot of detectives. And we did it for a very important reason, because we saw the crime shifting back then to that type of internet crime, cyber crime, People were not robbing a bank with a gun anymore. They were robbing a bank with a deposit slip and fake ID or a computer keyboard. And those 200 detectives, the number has changed slightly, but the workload has done nothing but gone up since 2013 when we first stood up that unit. We can absolutely, John just raise your hand. John can put you in touch with somebody from the Grand Larceny Division, and John will remind me whether it's somebody from Tommy Galati's group or from Chief Rodney Harrison's group. That I think one of the things that we've done very effectively the last number of years is look outward, and we do not pretend to have all the answers. So whether it's going across the country to Los Angeles, or we were in Houston recently, just seeing what other police departments do, how they tackle the problems before them. Sometimes the dynamics of what they're facing is not relevant, but more often than not, it's different sides of the same coin. And we often have a lot to learn from each other. And we've done the same. We have literally traveled the world in recent years in terms of looking at other countries and how their police are used on traditional crime, on terrorism, on cybercrime, and things of that nature. So if a partnership is possible here, we would absolutely be interested.
जो बिजनेस लोन है, होटल मोटल गैस स्टेशन, इसकी फाइनेंसिंग करते हैं, या कोई आप प्रॉपर्टी खरीद रहे हैं तो उसमें हम कमर्शियल प्रॉपर्टी होनी चाहिए, उसमें हम आपकी हेल्प करते हैं और कंसल्टेशन करते हैं आपके लिए कम से कम अच्छे लोन जो यहाँ पे अमेरिका में अवेलेबल है, लेकिन उसके लिए आपका क्रेडिट अच्छा होना चाहिए या आपका जो बिज़नेस का एक्सपीरियंस होना चाहिए, तो फिर आप हमसे रब्ता कर सकते हैं। और हमारा नंबर है 7186371178। तो आप किसी वक्त भी ये creditforbiz.com में जाएं, क्लिक करें और उसके बाद सारे जो हमारी सर्विसेज हैं वो आपको पता चल जाएगी। और ये 15 साल हो गए हमें ये अपनी पाकिस्तानी एशियन कम्युनिटी की खिदमत करते हुए।